Joe Louis. Let me tell you something, Sec. This is the people that I admire as a kid. Now, here's the thing, right? I admire the guy where when I was a kid, I admire you admire people that was dead years ago. Years ago, you never seen anything, and this is before the YouTube. So it wasn't like I saw 100 Joe Louis fights. I only saw fucking what ESPN Classics put. But I did see that Braddock fight, and obviously they made that movie Cinderella Man. You know, Sack, you're the fight guy here. You're the fight expert. But Cinderella Man, and I remember I liked that movie, but it's true. I love the ending in that movie when it was like after the end, and Jim J. Braddock wins the fucking fight. You know what I mean? And the actor that plays him, there was a guy, Russell Crowe, right? He plays him in great ending. But at the end, they go, and then the next fight he had, it was Joe Louis, and Joe Louis knocked his ass out in the second round or some shit. But Joe Louis said that he was the toughest man I've ever fought.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He said that. But here's the thing, though. Joe Louis, what he said, he was the first.
He was the first African American to hold the belt since Jack Johnson.
Right. Definitely Jack Johnson. Yeah, absolutely. But Joe Louis was the man because he fought a lot of fucking important fights. He fought some fucking German guy. But the German guy, Max Baer, that he fought wasn't a bad guy. Although he was a German. This was during Nazi time, Germany. And that was a big thing where, like, Hitler was like, when he lost, like, Hitler was like way disappointed. You know how that kind of that shit goes.
Yeah.
But Joe Louis won the title, the heavyweight title. And still, when he came to America, people cheered for him, but he was a second-class citizen, man. And that was a fucking shit time. That people, to this day, this is why they're pissed off and angry.
Yeah. People still look up to him though, because he did do the service, and people.
Oh yeah, he totally fought in the exactly. And then and let's be clear. If anybody do the history on Joe Louis, I'm saying I think the Lobo Show audience is a little bit older crowd. So I don't think anybody's going to be listening to this if they listen to this far, where they're going, who the fuck is Joe Louis? You know what I mean? But I mean,
they better know who he is. Yeah,
right. Yeah. But dude, Joe Louis, he completely got the shaft from the IRS. It was like they completely fucked him over. Like it was one of those things where there's like, in a way, like in hindsight now, there's like, all right, they were like fucking with him like on purpose and shit. It's like, come on, but yeah, the guy served his fucking country.
Didn't he have to get out of retirement to fight Rocky Marciano?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Rocky Marciano. Oh, forget about that. Rocky Marciano, he almost knocked his fucking head out in the second fucking row. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rocky Marciano, it was one of those things. That was fucked up, though, because you know how it goes. Like, to my Italians still talk about Rocky Marciano to this fucking day for that shit. But, Joe Louis was way out of his prime. You know how it is in boxing. Oh, yeah. But let me tell you this, though. Like, I'm not saying that I saw every fight of him, but you know how it is when it comes down to the fighting game and the auras of the great fighters and shit. You know what I mean? He's like, you didn't see every fight that they had, but God damn it, you didn't have to see. You could see one fight and know how great they were and how they can match up with other great fighters. And to me personally, I think Joe Louis was probably the greatest heavyweight fighter of all times in boxing. I mean, in boxing, dude.
I mean, here's the thing. I like Joe Louis as much as the next guy, and I respect him because, he did do it, but he's not the greatest of all time. I mean,
don't tell me. Listen, and I'm not here to be disrespectful and shit, right? But don't tell me you're going to give me that Muhammad Ali bullshit. Everybody with this Muhammad Ali. Come on. Was he the greatest? Oh, come on. Come on.
Well, hey, that's what he was billed as. He did knock out George Foreman when George Foreman was like 40-something to no, knocking everybody out, and
yeah, but look at Joe Louis.
A lot of good. I don't know. I mean, in my opinion,
the problem is that with Joe Louis, I'm just saying though, it's like maybe it's like the era. Like, well, I don't know those guys he beat, but he wasn't like he was fighting cab drivers. The guy he was beating were contenders, and the Max Baer fight was more important than any fight. Well. I mean, let me ask you a question then. I guess Muhammad Ali, his fights were important in terms of a social issue. But I mean, it's like, so was Joe Louis. I'm not going to take any away from both of them. They did. I think Joe Louis was the fucking greatest. I mean, are you really going to say Muhammad Ali was the greatest heavyweight of all time? He
fought Frazier. He fought Liston.
But he lost to Joe Frazier.
But he beat him, didn't he?
And let's be honest,
once
that Joe was the Sonny Liston fight Was that the infamous picture? That was completely. I mean, people are saying that it's a
I
possibility that
know.
that fight can be
It was
fixed.
yeah, fake. Yeah. Yeah.
That fight could be fixed. That infamous picture, Muhammad Ali knocking down Sonny Liston, and then he was like, "Come on, get up! I know you got more than that." And Sonny Liston didn't want to get up. Next thing you know, you look in the back, you see fucking Giacana in the back, and the boys. You know what I mean? You see
I don't know.
fucking
I
Giacana
just
and
know,
Frank Sinatra in the
Ali
background.
could, he could really go for, being 6'3", whatever he was, 215. Like, he wasn't the hardest hit.
Listen, Muhammad Ali was fucking. Do not get me wrong. I mean, here's the thing: he's fucking great, but I mean, it was always that question of Muhammad Ali versus Mike Tyson. Now, Ali was tall. He was faster. He was more of a boxer. But I'm talking about Mike Tyson in his prime, though, bro. The guy literally, he was like an animal out of a cage.
I mean, Tyson could have caught him. He could have knocked him out in the first round, but that was Tyson's only thing. If Tyson couldn't get him out of there in the first few rounds, Tyson would have got finished.
Yeah, that's the problem with Tyson. That was the problem with Mike Tyson, is that the fact that he could never, if he was going, if it was going extra rounds, it was not looking good for him. I mean, he won the majority at the time fights of his. He did like he went the distance like what 3 times in his career. No, I'm talking about yeah, but I'm talking about yeah, exactly. But in terms of yeah, you're right. But in terms of his prime though, in his prime, yeah, I think he probably like you said like 10 rounds, probably when he was like before he was champion. But while he was champion, I don't think he got fucking. I don't think he went 12 rounds as champion.
No, definitely not. No, I
Right.
don't think so.
But Joe Louis, I'll tell you why he's the man though. Joe Louis was going like 15 rounds, dude.
Yeah, I mean, rules were different back then.
Totally. Absolutely.
Uh,
You got to understand the gloves, all that shit was fucking different. But Joe Louis was an absolute real.
But I feel like styles were different too. Like fighters were a lot more tighter back then, and nowadays fighters are more loose. They're more like boxers. Back then it was like, you got to be strong and hit hard. It wasn't about, being a Willie Pep. Nobody really cared about being a Willie Pep. They wanted, to win by knockout. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and it was about that, and not necessarily knockout, but just like yes, knockout. That's the goal, obviously. That's like a home run. You know what I mean, like the equivalent of baseball and shit. But the truth of the matter is like, absolutely that sweet science boxing shit. You know what? I think, like I said, I wouldn't be a dope and say Muhammad Ali would definitely probably best Tyson, to be honest. I have to play a little devil's advocate, but Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali would be a great fucking fight. They actually match up really good. I think Joe Louis will give it to him. Now, like I said, I saw as many Joe Louis fights than Ali fights, but I don't know, man. Joe Louis, dude, like was no fucking joke. I know Muhammad Ali wasn't, but Joe Louis was the brown bomber. Motherfucker knocked fucking guys out.
But one thing I can say, like I'm, no disrespect, and I'm not a professional fighter, so but everybody knows. I think his name is Burt Sugar. He was a boxing historian. He
Absolutely.
did. I mean,
the guy with the fedora.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. He always had
fedora. Someone a cigar. Yeah.
Yep.
Burt
Exactly.
Sugar. Greatest.
And he knows everything about boxing.
Does.
And he always said that Joe Louis had a lazy jab. Every time he threw it, he would.
That was one thing about Joe Louis. They were, but that was like kind of like the racial thing about it during the time. There was like, oh, he's lazy. He's very lazy. And there was like times when Joe Louis lost, people always felt like he could have won. He was just being lazy. But how can somebody be so successful and be known as one of the greatest heavyweights of all time with a lazy jab? I love Burt Sugar, and I'm pretty sure he saw more Joe Louis fights than I've ever have. But I mean, how can somebody be so successful and be considered the top 5 greatest heavyweight boxer of all time with having a lazy jab?
I mean, I'm sure maybe he had a crazy of a piston of a right hand, like coming down at you. I really don't know. But that's one thing that I did hear, and I've never watched, a lot of his fights. I've maybe seen one fight, but it is very old traditional style the way he boxed.
Absolutely.
Very high, tight guard. He's not very,
He's a Detroit guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, yeah. But what I'm trying to say is like he really relied more on blocking rather than evading and moving and being tricky. He was just a very traditional boxer that was talented. Very talented.
Absolutely. And there's a great story between Max Baer and Joe Louis and that whole thing. Anybody who hasn't seen it, there's an older movie, and the movie I feel really holds up.